Hello and welcome to yet another Lucid conceptual prototype video. In this video, we'll be walking you through a small conceptual prototype on active data governance with what happens when you have a big data platform which could have changes being done on it dynamically, and you have a traditional data governance platform like Collibra. How do you ensure that both of them stay in sync? And how do you ensure that information that is changed on the source data platform is reflected in Collibra with as little of a programming interface as possible? And how do you feedback information from Collibra back into Atlas? So let's now go into the two platforms themselves and see how they are as of now. So on Ambari, we see that there is a database, and on this database, we have several different tables, party, creditor, and so on and so forth. And similarly, in the Atlas database, we have two locations where you have information about Hive assets, one of which is the eventual destination of the Hive information, metadata information, which is something called HiveDB, physical data dictionary inside the subcommunity called Atlas inside big data. However, this is not where it always resides, and there is a staging area here called new Hive data assets, into which any changes made in Hive are first reflected into. So now let us now look at what happens when we start with changing something in Ambari, or changing. Basically what we will do now is add a new table. We have a table called creditor, so why don't we create a table called data, and that is quite easily done. So we create a table of debtors with the name and the debtor ID, an internal ID. So this gets created. So it takes a bit for Hive to actually create the table. Now the architecture is that as soon as something is created on the source platform, the metadata repository is refreshed and a message is placed onto a Kafka queue. And Lucid's Collibra Atlas template reads data which is coming out of the Kafka queue and places it in the Collibra metadata repository and creates a task. Let us now go into the Collibra metadata repository and see if it has changed. As we can see here, these three columns, this table and these two columns, these three assets have appeared here in the new Hive data assets data dictionary, which is the staging area in Collibra. So here we also have the detailed information relating to the debtor table, which you can see in Atlas. And so this has the lineage and all of the impact and all this information. And right now there are no tags here on the data table. Now let us now go in and sign in as a different profile. So we sign in as a reviewer, and here we see that the reviewer has got 3 tasks allocated to the reviewer. Let us go and see what those tasks are. So I have been given a task, the reviewer that is has been given a task to review these 3 assets which have been loaded into Collibra in the staging region, and the reviewer goes in and does a few changes of his or her own. And as part of the changes, the reviewer adds a tag here. And the reviewer does the same thing for both the other assets also. towards the end of the as a reviewer's review, you would see that the reviewer's queue has been cleared out and there is no tasks left for the reviewer. So this now becomes somebody else's responsibility. And who would that be? Now we have set up a workflow so that after the reviewer, there is an approver who would actually approve the changes that the reviewer has made. And as we can see, as we log in as the approver has had 3 tasks allocated to him or her, among which are approval of the table and the changes to the 2 columns in the table. The approver approves this, and the approver has to approve all 3 of them. So he or she goes in and runs the approval activity. And at the end of the approval, we can see that these 3 assets have been loaded into the HiveDB domain, which is the eventual resting place of this metadata. So here we see the debtor ID and debtor name. Interestingly, this information about all the activity that was performed on this assets is captured here in the history of the asset. Now let us now go and see what has happened after we approved on Atlas. So there were no tags here before. And now the tag that we added, which was customer, has now been reflected onto the Hive table in Atlas. So this shows you a small example of the entire flow from when something is changed on the Atlas platform for a Hive table, and when it is actually managed inside Collibra and approved inside Collibra and edited inside Collibra for tagging, and then the tag is again passed back into the Atlas database. So that brings us to the end of this small demo. Thank you for being with us so far. We will be releasing more demos as time goes on. Thank you.